Good morning, everyone. We will get into it. Firstly, welcome to Granite Group HQ. Thank you for joining us for Conversations with Thought Leaders. It's always particularly exciting when we've got an international guest. Particularly excited to have Luke, who's over for Agile Oz and some other stuff. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. We're doing things a little bit differently, so great to see some new faces and people who have been with us on the journey for the last 15 years of these events. So we're going to go till about 8:20 with our usual format. And then if you want to hang around, we're going to adjourn to a meeting room. I appreciate everyone's got busy days, but if anyone wants to hang around to have a bit more of a detailed discussion around themes that have come out today, we can certainly do that. So I'm going to hand over to Luke, and we're going to be talking about unlocking the power of Gen Z in the workforce, or to use the American or North American enunciation, the power of Gen Z.
So again, today we're going to be talking about unlocking the potential of your Gen Z workforce. And yes, I'm going to use the North American pronunciation, not because I am not fine with doing Gen Z, but then I feel like I'd get in my head all the time of like saying it about 1,000 times over the course of the next half hour. So I'm just going to do Z just so I don't start to confuse myself on top of everything else. So with that said, let's dive in. So my name is Luke, and I am not Gen Z. You're like, yeah, we can see that. We have eyes. Fair enough. So don't try to say cool words to me like coquette or IJBOL. Certainly not Delulu, because I won't get them. Although in fairness, I didn't really understand the slang of my generation either. This talk's gonna be lit, and you're gonna have severe FOMO if you miss it. No. But I work with Gen Z, and I consult with clients looking to inspire Gen Z. And I'm blessed to have many amazing Gen Z relatives, including a baby sister, which is probably in some ways where my defense of Gen Z really comes from. As you can see, I'm from Austin, Texas, which is amazing to be skipping the 100-degree Fahrenheit, 37 Celsius kind of days right now and be here in Melbourne, so I'm definitely enjoying that. But you might be wondering, have I ever been to Australia before? And fun fact, I actually did a semester at Macquarie in Sydney in university, which was amazing. So got to check out Melbourne, get a nice classic shot to send back to mom at the Opera House. But I was going through the old archives, and this was my personal favorite that I uncovered. It was a classic beach shot, right? And I like to think, even back then, I was contemplating, how can I bring some really amazing insights for my presentation in 10 or 15 years from now? So yeah, really, this has been a long time coming, I feel. So, quick definitions. For those of y'all that don't study generation definitions every single morning, Gen Z is the generation born between 1997 and 2010. Meaning, a lot of times people, I feel, find this pretty surprising. The oldest Gen Z, if my US math serves me all right, already 27 years old. Kind of surprising, right? I feel like a lot of times they're still perceived as the baby interns just coming into our organizations. In fact, by next year, and they're off, coming down, it's gonna be a photo finish. Sorry, I just tried to make that graph a little more exciting. Some of these are gonna be US stats. I couldn't find the exact equivalents, but the trends are almost identical with Australia. So this is the makeup of the workforce as it currently stands in the US. And surprisingly, again, to a lot of people, Gen Z is already third most represented in the workforce, having just earlier this year overtaken the baby boomer generation. So again, they're very much joining our teams, our organizations, contributing. By next year, they will already make up over a quarter, 1 in 4 people in the workforce. So yeah, these insights, if not directly relevant today, will be pretty relevant for certainly the next 5, 10 years and beyond. So, as this millennial, trying to get the arrow, I should have tilted it a little. As a millennial with well over a decade of experience in the corporate world, running my own agency, I feel like I can kind of understand both sides of this conversation, sometimes debate around Gen Z in the workforce. On one hand, I feel like pretty much everything being said about Gen Z was said about us, millennials. They're lazy, they're entitled, they don't want to work. If they stop buying so much avocado toast, they can afford houses. Not in Austin, not in Sydney, not in Melbourne, not in a lot of places around the world, probably most places around the world. But on the other hand, I do want to appreciate, and again, as a owner of my own agency, I empathize that there is very much a high cost to low engagement. Hit you with a couple of stats. For every $10,000 your organization is spending on the salary of a disengaged employee, you're throwing away about $3,400 of that. We're getting to Wednesday now, so these extra slices come like Friday night. You're gonna want those in the fridge, right? We're gonna want to have those handy.
Who doesn't like pizza?
Exactly. And for every time someone actually leaves your organization, which Gen Z does on average every 2 years, rapid turnover, the estimated equivalent cost is about 9 months of their salary to get them replaced and get someone new up to speed. And that actually varies. I've heard estimates as high as 2 times someone's salary. So it depends a bit on the industry and the role, of course. But yeah, those are some serious costs. On the positive side, when you do have an engaged team, they tend to drive profits and productivity at 3 times the rate of disengaged teams. So again, this isn't just, sometimes I feel like this gets cast as sort of a touchy-feely kind of topic. But this is very much a bottom line issue. So what can we do about this challenge? We've had the Great Resignation crisis, and now this new phrase that I've been hearing is called the Great Gloom, where resignations aren't quite happening, but we're seeing employee engagement scores plummet quite a bit, especially among Gen Z and millennials. So what can we do about this? Does this mean that we have to learn all the cool phrases and TikTok dances and really become like Gen Z? All right, taking a step back here, y'all. I am willing, coming all the way from the US, to embarrass myself in front of y'all this morning by attempting a TikTok dance, if you're interested in seeing it.
Yeah, we would love to see that.
Okay, all right. If you were voting no, just shield your eyes for like 30 seconds. It'll be over very quickly. Yeah, we'll get Ray Gun out here. He'll get that licensing deal set up. Absolutely, that'll have to become part of the routine. So with that said, in the spirit of being willing to get outside of our comfort zones a little bit, we'll give this one a shot.
Let me tell you.
Thank you. Didn't have that on my checklist of expected things to be doing this August. TikTok dances at 7:40, 50 in the morning in Australia, but it's good thing to add to the LinkedIn profile, I think.
Bucket list item.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The good news, I don't think that's the answer. Instead, I want to propose that we be prepared to evolve with Gen Z, with kind of being the really key operative concept here. So how I want to take a look at that today, this evolution. Look at Gen Z a little bit more closely. What are they all about as a generation? I'm going to take a look at the workforce. What do they perceive about the workforce? And what does the workforce perceive about them? And bring those insights together and talk about strategies to really help them thrive and contribute at high levels at our organizations. But I'm going to really encourage y'all to get into a mindset here before we dive into all the facts and figures and insights. Because without this mindset, you'll just kind of scoff and kind of move along with your day. But I really encourage you to be open to the idea that different doesn't necessarily equal bad. I feel a lot of times, we've got some very accomplished business leaders here this morning, and I feel like a lot of times we get a little bit set in our ways, a little bit in love with our systems and our processes. It can be kind of frustrating when a new generation doesn't fit really neatly into that box. So in that spirit, I wanted to showcase Gen Z's gotten really into some of these so-called old school devices themselves. Y'all know Walkmans are really kind of cool and fashionable again. So yeah, if you've got them hanging out in the closet, this is the time to bust that out, walk down King Street.
Sony Walkman.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Check the garage, check the attic, it's around there somewhere. Big earphones, yeah. So note that, there you get some tips here today. And I feel like in the spirit of different doesn't equal bad, being here in Melbourne, we can embrace that spirit. Just like the Richmond fans or Adelaide, right? Really embracing that vibe, really leaning into it. It's pretty good. Check out the orange hair, not too shabby. So yeah, I feel like we can embrace that concept here today, or at least have some awesome Halloween costumes. Halloween's getting more popular in Australia, right?
Yeah, it's getting
right?
massive.
It's great.
Supermarkets have got hold of it. Some of the marketing, money-making activities.
Absolutely, right? And who doesn't want to get dressed up as a tiger? Come on. What's that?
Go Richmond.
Yeah, there we go. All right, very cool. How's that AFL game on Sunday? Didn't go super well, but it was fun in spirit. You could see the passion. So some quick hitting implications right off the bat. We'll dive a little bit deeper in a minute. But setting up a company culture where we're open to cultivating curiosity. I'll talk about it quite a bit, but Gen Z is a digital native generation. They're used to they get an idea in their head, look it up, find some insights on the internet, maybe post something about it, getting kind of real-time access. And so by contrast, a lot of organizations kind of a little bit pushback sometimes when someone's asking why or wanting a lot of information right off the bat can be a little bit annoying. So being open to kind of creating that culture where we are sharing as much context as possible. Doing our best to align and really lean into the purpose that is driving our seeking of profits. What are we trying to achieve to make the world a better place? And our societies and our cultures and our communities a better place. Gen Z being a very, very purpose-driven generation. And then, of course, no conversation around Gen Z can be complete without talking about technology and their prevalency to want to use digital devices for communication. But looking at how we can kind of find the best of both worlds. The irony sometimes for me is there's so many complaints, they're always on their devices. Which is very true in many cases. But a lot of times, ironically, they are communicating to people, just people that aren't physically present with them. And so I'm not advocating really one way or another, but it is a way that they communicate, and looking at technologies that can help facilitate that to get the best of both worlds in person and digitally can go a long way. We'll dive a little bit deeper, but just to kind of bring home this introduction here, I just want to remind everyone that, kind of like it or not, Gen Z is the future of the workforce, right? And so people like y'all who are getting up bright and early and joining us this morning, you're simply taking these insights, bringing them back to your orgs, your teams, your world. You're simply going to be best positioned for the future. So yeah, good on you for coming out today. So with that said, we're going to dive a lot deeper into unlocking the potential, but that's kind of the high-level overview, getting in the right headspace for this. And with that said, we'll, like I said, get in a little bit deeper. Obligatory warning here, just naturally we are talking about entire generations, so there will of course be exceptions. And I'm not even saying that anyone of any generation is always going to be the perfect fit for your teams. I also do want to let y'all know we're going to be putting together some and willing to share some amazing resources with y'all in partnership with the career conversation as well. I've got a cheat sheet. We've got actually multiple cheat sheets for y'all. So you'll have some really excellent resources. And then I've been over the last year producing a podcast called Gen Z at Work. And we've got a lot of amazing interviews with Gen Z employees, managers, leaders, where we dive a lot deeper into this content. And I definitely want to encourage y'all to participate as well. We'll have some moments to share ideas, and please do it. And we even have an overflow session where we can talk even more after this hour. So yeah, and don't just do it for me. Do it for your fellow attendees here this morning. If you've got ideas or questions or strategies that have worked for y'all, please do share them. So first I want to dive into what is Gen Z all about? What are some of the key characteristics you need to know about? So I've taken this whole generation and condensed them down to 5 principles. So yes, again, this is going to be a simplification, but I feel these are the top things you need to be aware of. This first one, digital natives, is probably my personal favorite, just because there's so much to unpack with that concept. And we all hear it and think, oh yeah, they grew up with the internet. Yeah, okay. But again, there's a lot that rides on that. So digital natives, what do they expect? They expect personalized experiences. Gen Z is really attuned to, is this authentic? Or is someone just kind of being a fake Instagram kind of persona? I already talked about it earlier. They expect access to information. The generation that is used to just either looking something up immediately or posting something, and within minutes, certainly hours, getting a ton of feedback on what they've shared. And you might notice a lot of those principles are somewhat incongruent with kind of the traditional way of businesses operate. Very need to know, very siloed information. Sometimes a lot of pushback for people who are constantly asking why, et cetera. So that's one to keep in mind. They are a highly idealistic generation, statistically the highest of any in the workforce. So they're continuing to push this concept of kind of bringing one's whole self to the workforce. Or not even to the workforce, like just being one's whole self, not having kind of that life persona and then that work persona that can oftentimes be very different. Some of the key things that they tend to be very willing to talk about, environmental concerns is very much top of the list, that they're worried, what are summers in Australia, what are summers in Texas over the next 20, 40, 80, 100 years going to look like? Will we have any water left in either of those places that we can drink? So a major concern. Also in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, both in the US and Australia, this is the most diverse generations to date. And so that's something that they're looking for and expecting to be present at the organizations that they're a part of. So it's the idealistic element. The third one, they're highly entrepreneurial. They are, in the US, the highest rates of entrepreneurship of any generation. Have y'all heard of the phrase, like the so-called side hustle? Heard of that? Yeah. There's so many hilarious ones. You check TikTok, like you can get paid to be a fake friend who just shows up to like parties or corporate events. I don't know if any of y'all are fake plants here. I don't know what the budget was for that, just to kind of fill out the you can send pictures of your feet and get paid for that. That's a real thing. There's all kinds of bizarre side. Obviously, some of the key ones like driving, Uber-like services, food delivery that we can do at a moment's notice. But I find it ironic because Gen Z gets oftentimes criticized as being a lazy generation, whereas I've heard stats as high as 70% of them are earning income supplementally and working a second type of job. So yeah, they're very entrepreneurial and thinking about how we can capture that spirit in our organizations. Work to live, a bit ironic having the American lecture of the Aussies on work-life balance, but I'll do my best here. Yeah, it's increasingly a generation that really wants to place that emphasis on finding that balance, making sure they very much have an identity and passions and pursuits outside of their job. And to the extent that they will oftentimes closely evaluate a promotion or some type of change in their role. Like, okay, yeah, promotion, that sounds nice, 20% raise, cool. 50, 80% workload increase. Okay, now these scales are getting tipped a little bit, right? To the extent where they might say, I'm good. And then finally, flexibility. I think what comes to mind oftentimes, of course, is hybrid work, which very much is something that they are interested in. But I do also want to stress Gen Z has a ton of flexibility in terms of where they're at in their lives as compared to previous generations, as in big, sizable commitments like a house or having started a family. They have lower rates than other generations did at their age for those types of commitments, which means it's pretty easy for them to just be like, this isn't working for me. I'm gonna go, go drive cars for a little bit, deliver people, and find something else, especially when it comes to these entry-level style roles. So do note that that is very much an element that is at play there. Shifting over to the workforce, what do they think about the workforce? Well, it's a little bit of a somber assessment, but I do again want y'all to be aware at least. So first of all, they are taking a very close look at this concept of employer-employee loyalty. The really important point to note here is the oldest Gen Zs, 13, 14, 15, when the Great Recession of 2008 happened and onward. And so they saw family members who've had jobs for years, sometimes decades, have those just disappear overnight. And then again, when the pandemic hit, in a lot of cases and in a lot of industries. In certain industries in the US, tech, there's a lot of mass layoffs happening in tech over the last year or two. And not only do they kind of hear about that, they stream. Have y'all seen like live streaming of people getting fired on TikTok when they know that this meeting comes on their calendar? So they see that happening, very connected in that way. And so yeah, the reality is they just know that this is something, if you put all your eggs in that basket can disappear very quickly. Pipe dream, I use that in sort of a contrast to the so-called American dream, the idea that you could just have a single family income and buy a house and a car and put your kids to some nice school. Really not a reality in most places anymore. And this is where you get these kind of like well-intentioned pep talks, right? The pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't even know how that works, physics. But like, yeah, here's what I did, and this is what made a big impact for me. And again, a lot of times those pep talks are very well-intentioned from parents or managers. But what Gen Z oftentimes experiences is that we're not being acknowledged that we could put in the exact same input as generations before us and not expect that same output. And that's oftentimes what they're feeling isn't being truly acknowledged in those conversations, which can lead to the eye rolling and all the, okay, cool. And then finally, world on fire. I hate to mean that kind of literally here in Australia, right? But crazy wildfires that we've been dealing with over the past few years. Obviously, again, the climate being a major thing, but also just the way that the pandemic disrupted the lives of Gen Z. High school graduations, college graduations, first internships, first jobs, like all that just kind of disappeared. And yeah, we did the Zoom graduation. Oh, there's my name, cool. Really in the U.S., like, $150,000 later, I get to see my little name scroll like a credits, and that's, yeah, sweet. A little underwhelming. So yeah, they really do have a lot of stress about what the future is going to look like for them, which has led to them having the least positive outlook of any generation in the workplace. Now, I share all of this with y'all not to be really depressing that you got up early and came to see me. I don't want to bring you down too much. But just hopefully that we can create this empathy for where they're coming from that perspective. And I really want to emphasize empathy because the other reaction is competitiveness, right? Like, well, I had it tough in my generation, and these are the things that I went through, which is totally valid. But like I said, I'm hoping that we can connect around that, and obviously anyone older than Gen Z also lived through all the things I just described. But yeah, hoping we can empathize and perhaps even create connections around that versus just dismissing them. Now I also want to, we'll do this a little Family Feud style. Wanted to acknowledge what some of the top, we'll call them complaints or concerns that companies have with Gen Z in the workforce. So I've got the top 5 listed here. So we can just shout them out, y'all. Do we have any ideas, any thoughts as to some of the challenges associated with Gen Z? Punctuality. I'm going to put that under work ethic. Yeah. You're saying they're late or not showing up on time. That might actually be fitting into another category too, but yeah, very good.
Similar thing. They sometimes just don't turn up to meetings.
Yep. Absolutely. So I'll keep that at our work ethic, and then it will also fit into another piece. But yeah.
Resigning when things get hard.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna throw that under expectations. So, yeah, expecting maybe to get a promotion or a raise, or just not run into any frustrations. And then if it does, I'm out of here. Cool. Chipping away.
Yeah, so there's another way, so it's not good or bad, but in a way of the difference is like the body language, how they sit, how they talk to you,
Yeah. Well done. This one is rarely captured, but you said enough things that I'm gonna give you the points for that. Soft skills, yes. Like I said, that oftentimes is one that people miss, but yeah, that's actually the top thing that companies say. And like I said, the timing also is incorporated that, but yeah, showing up, when do they show up? How do they do a handshake? Do they make eye contact? All these elements that our companies are experiencing a lot of frustration with Gen Z. Nice guess. We got 2 more. Anyone else?
The second one must be communication.
Yep, nailed it. Nicely done. You got the icon library. Yep, perfect. Communication, their tendency to really focus on digital communication versus in person or face to face. Correct. Yeah, oftentimes. What is this?
Neither do I.
What is?
And I'm not a Gen Z. I'm like on the phone. I'd rather a text message.
I mean, when I get a phone call that's unannounced, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, yeah. Oh, it's just gonna take a minute. Okay, 30 minutes later. Yeah. One more. Any final guesses?
Strategic thinking, they think short term, immediate.
Yeah, I think I'd probably throw that under expectations, but yeah.
Not bringing enough creativity.
Creativity. Valid, but not what we've got. All right, I'll throw it to y'all. But once I reveal it, you got to give me the Steve Harvey, like, you got to say it back to me, all right? So, sensitivity. Wait, let's try that again.
Sensitivity.
Yeah, cool, right? I feel like I'm all running a game show, so that's cool. That's just for my entertainment, purely. Yeah, so oftentimes that they get very, very frustrated or concerned or back away if any type of corrections are being made in their discussions with them, or that they're quick to get riled up. Does that resonate with anyone in their experiences? Okay, very good. So yeah, wanted to acknowledge these. One of my favorite things I've been starting to see more recently, especially some of the large consulting companies have really leaned into this, is this idea of just doing soft skills trainings at their organizations. Does anyone do that now at their companies? Yeah? Okay, cool, yeah. So in many cases, what I find amusing is in many cases, they started off offering that to only the Gen Z employees. And they found this is actually really good. We need to extend this to everyone in the workforce. Because the reality is, this is a very unique time in history. Not only do we have Gen Z entering the workforce at the rates I shared, but also we have people working longer than ever before. So we now have like a 60, 70, 80-year range of people in the workforce, which means the norms and the expectations, like there's a lot of differences there, right? So I really like the idea of let's just get everyone on the same page, just do some expectation setting, get away from some of that kind of passive-aggressive style conflict that can otherwise emerge there. So in that context, thinking about what are some of the implications that we can do at our organizations, I'm a huge fan of let's start embracing the tech that's now available, whether it's HR analytics tools or AI solutions. Let's start to really look at how can we craft a more personalized experience than the simple idea of the corporate ladder. Because as I mentioned, in many cases, that's not what Gen Z is trying to do. They're not just going to junior and then senior and then director and then VP or however it progresses. They might want something very different. Doesn't mean that they're not interested in continuing to contribute, but if that's our only pathway and they don't want that, we know what that's going to result in. Impact transparency. Again, I feel like this has been a really interesting one that's emerged in a lot of my conversations, is that I find that companies, in many cases, are doing cool things, are doing interesting and positive things. But it's easy to lose track of that in the day-to-day, right? We have these sort of rah-rah January, like kick off the year, and we really focus on our mission in those big CEO pep talks. But then it's August, and it's like, oh, this client is terrible, this 17th edition of this deliverable. It can be easy to lose sight of that a lot of times. What are we actually trying to achieve by doing this? So really leaning into impact not only organizationally, but also what is your individual contribution? How is that playing that role? Helps them feel that sense of purpose and belonging. Cross-generational collaboration. One I'm continuing to really explore and lean into, where one cool idea that I've seen start to work quite well, because again, you kind of have the classic mentorship, that's the traditional way of approaching that. But in some cases, it can feel very like lectury, right? Sit there quietly, and I'm gonna tell you what life was like 30 years ago, and like, cool. It's not something that everyone gets super excited about doing. I like the idea of having sort of a skills-based collaboration option, where, for example, each employee could self-nominate, like, here are 2 or 3 things that I'm good at. Maybe it's more technology-driven. Maybe it's more soft skills-driven. And then they make themselves available, say, for like Friday for lunch, in like a little kind of small table, and 6, 7 people gather, and you can learn from them. Maybe it's one time, maybe it's over the course of something if it takes longer to teach that skill. But yeah, to me, that's more merit-based kind of collaboration versus simply just this kind of generational lecture kind of circuit. Well-being integration, Gen Z very focused on mental health and that work-life balance that we talked about. So celebrating that, embracing that where appropriate, and highlighting how that people do have lives outside of work and that you do have opportunities. Again, having like 2 weeks of paid leave in the US, like a little ironic for me to be talking here about that with y'all. But yeah, I think that's something to just continue to lean into. And just the idea of these cool new experiences. I was joking, I was at an event a few weeks ago and talking, like, the concept of like the big annual conference in Las Vegas came up. And even as this millennial, I already get this like jaded, I'm like, oh God, Vegas again for it's such a pain, it's hot, it's like, the hotels are like a mile long. It's fun to party in, but when you're there for a business conference, it's kind of a slog sometimes. But I was like, oh, I have to remember, like, for them, it was super, for the people who hadn't done that before, like, it's amazing, an incredible experience. Like, yeah, all right. So, the international opportunities, people, many of y'all have companies who are connecting with people all over the world. Like, that's really, really cool. I still find it baffled that, like, Tim and I can chat on Zoom and, like, seconds from across the world. I don't know. The flight was not seconds, but the Zoom connection. It's all like cables, right? In the ocean.
Yeah, amazing.
It's preposterous, but yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah. So we talked about Gen Z in the workforce. We talked about the workforce and what Gen Z thinks about the workforce and what the workforce thinks about them. We knocked out that top 5 pretty quickly, actually. Had some ideas very front of mind. But now we want to bring those together and talk about ways that we can get them to thrive. Does anyone see it there? Kind of cutesy. Yeah. What do we got? What is it? Yeah. What? Sorry, I thought of that like when I was jogging one morning. This is gonna blow people's minds. Look at that. Yeah. Got like a Mask of Zorro kind of vibe here. Anyway, all right, continuing on. How do we get them to thrive? To me, it really comes down to 3 high-level, top-level principles. Really leaning into and embracing a culture of constant, ongoing growth. Secondly, really leaning into that transparent communications that we've been talking about throughout today's session. And then the third one is the most easy to say and the most difficult to do, making them feel valued. But like I said, I want to get a little bit more specific with y'all, so we'll do a little bit of a lightning preview in effort to not make all of y'all late for all your meetings and commitments later in the day. What I've done is I've taken a list of 10 plus subcategories, put them all on a timer, 20 seconds. Because I can't be trusted to do a lightning round. I'm passionate about all these. I would take 15 minutes per. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit, actually maybe I'll have David do the honors. We're just going to hit forward, and this thing's just going to start rolling, and I'm just going to do my best to keep up. So y'all ready for a lightning preview?
Yeah.
All right, make a little noise for me, please.
Ready for it. Come on, Luke, you got
Thank
this.
you. All right, so just hit that white forward button, and we'll jump into it.
Try not to screw it up. Are you
All right,
ready?
I'm ready. Let's do
I'm
it.
going to count it down. 3, 2, 1, go.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
3, 2, 1, go.
Love it. All right. You're good after that. You can do that. Okay. So Gen Z expects their organizations to play, and business leaders to play a leading role in making the world a better place. They see them as the third most effectual to achieving that. So like I said earlier, make sure you're doing good. That's a good place to start. But making sure you're communicating that and sharing that with your teams, because that visibility can often get lost in the lower rungs. Learning and development, things like training programs, mentorships, career mapping, really showing that there is progress to be made here. Because if they perceive that I landed here and I'm not growing, as y'all know, they will quickly oftentimes depart their organizations. In that same spirit, how can we embrace an internal side hustle mentality? Things like job shadowing, or I really like the idea of like an internal freelance marketplace where someone can take like a few hours or maybe a day of the week and contribute in another area. That gives them more exposure to the organization and helps them see that there is a long-term path for me contributing here. A great way to do that is the concept of gamification. Again, digital natives, we know this psychology works, credit card points, airline miles, levels, badges, points. The whole purpose here is to show not only that you are making progress, but this is what you're working toward. This is level 40. Like we're mapping this out together. So again, it's not just like I got hired, I got plopped here, and I've been here 3 years. Well, I guess it's time to go somewhere else. Switching over to transparency. 4 out of 5 Gen Z wants more visibility on what the expectations are, what the priorities are. And ironically, 2 out of 3 of their managers also feel that exact same way. So the blind leading the blind in many senses. But yeah, just mapping out, this is priority 1, this is priority 2. That was a real challenge when onboarding during the pandemic was happening, where people were just really scrambling. Lead with why. What are we trying to achieve on making the world a better place? Our communities, our societies better? And also, how does your individual contribution play a role here? A lot of times I find it's just adding to those sentences. This is what we're doing, and like here's a little more context, like another phrase or two can help go a long way. As digital natives, very used to high touch, high engagement communication. So instead of this idea of a monthly check-in or heaven forbid, an annual review, think of like breaking that up into how do we check in for 3, 4, 5 minutes on a more daily basis? That's the cadence that they're much more used to. Very similarly, how do we take these kind of high stakes, hey, why don't you join me in the room down the hall, and like let's kind of intense, right? How do we take that down in a bit as it relates to difficult conversations? How can we quickly check in? How can we find that alignment and share steps to improve? And also maybe even signal that, hey, we're gonna have this conversation. These are some of the things I wanna talk about. I wanna hear your perspective too, and hopefully help to diffuse some of that sensitivity. In terms of value, I just really wanna emphasize, y'all, the ROI there is incredible. 3 times the rate of employee engagement, 5 times the rate of external advocacy. Hey, my company's awesome. 5 times the rate of trust in leadership if an employee feels valued at their company. Get some dance. More dancing now. Communication. Surprisingly, still like 50-ish% of companies do not have great pathways for employees to provide communication. But even if they do, not everyone does. Most companies struggle to really close that feedback loop. And I use the example of like, by the way, these are just, Pickle Kate. Kind of terrifying, right? I try to mix in some Gen Z puns here and there. But nightmarish pickles aside, 4 out of 5 Gen Z do actually want an in-office experience. Not necessarily every day. They want the hybrid generally. But they want those mentorships. They want those friendships. Ironically, it's more millennials and Gen X who are like, we've got our share of the office. Like, we're good. We'll work remotely. Work-life balance, it is the top thing that they admire amongst their peers. It is the top thing that they look for in employers. So it is absolutely something to highlight and showcase, especially in recruiting and obviously in retention efforts. Woo!
Done.
4 minutes. The dog's not dead. I'm not dead either. It's all good. It's all good.
Perfect.
What was I saying right before the pickles? I just missed one final thought. Anyway, it's a value. Let me just. The pickles came on screen and they just really. I was just gonna say the thinking about like, and this is the recap of those 12, by the way. Thinking about when you pour your heart into those corporate surveys, right? You fill it all. Like, I really want to help make this place better. And then like 6 months or a year goes by. You get it next year. You're like, wait, did anyone even read this last year? Okay, check. I'm good, right? Like that's the way engagement plummets really quickly. That was the last thought I needed to fill in. Cool.
Fantastic. So we're done with the first session. If anyone, I appreciate everyone's got busy days, but if people would like to hang around, we're going to adjourn with a smaller group to the boardroom or one of the meeting rooms. Just a couple of things. I said at the start, we recently celebrated 15 years of being in business at Granite Consulting Group, and I just wanted to thank so many of you here today who have supported us on this journey. You know, we wouldn't be in business without the support of so many of the people in the room, and obviously my amazing colleagues that I work with and business partners. So thank you so much. So I wanted to say that. Just wanted to also
give a round of applause on that. Yeah.
for the scene. Round of applause for each other. I also just wanted to say thank you to Tim Way for introducing me to Luke. So I've known Tim for about 20 years. He runs a business called The Career Conversation, and they've got a new product called Career Reels. I think if we're going to send some stuff out to support today, maybe it can come from Tim's business, from Career Reels, and that will give people some takeaways.
Actually, real quickly, yeah. So if y'all want to, this is a little mini survey, and then you can ask for check the box on any resources you want, including our guide that we collaboratively created. So yeah, if you would be willing, that'd be amazing. Just like I said, it's just a few questions, and we can get those resources out to everyone.
And then finally, I wanted to, obviously many of you knew Chelsea, who was our office manager and organised our events. I wanted to welcome Nadine, who's joined the business recently, organised an amazing event today, and you'll be seeing a lot more of Nadine in the future. So I wanted to say, welcome to the Granite family, Nadine, and thank you for organising such an amazing event this morning. And then last but not least, Luke, amazing. Amazing, engaging presentation. And thanks so much for sharing the TikTok dances and stuff. I threatened to do that. I've got 2 teenage daughters, and I threatened to have a TikTok channel, and it didn't go down well at all.
That's interesting. So yesterday I was talking to someone about that who had seen my Agile Ops presentation. He said when his daughter does them, but he's in the background just being like, moo.
Yeah.
He said her engagement goes way up versus when she's just there by herself. So like anything weird in the background, like it can actually help contribute to bump those numbers up.
I'll bear that in mind.
Yeah. So
cool.
Little background dancer.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe it's not for me yet. Who knows?
Don't write it off yet.
Yeah, I won't. Cool. But thank you, everybody. And if you want to continue the discussion, we're going to go to that end of the office. But otherwise, have an amazing day and enjoy this taste of spring weather that we're having in Melbourne at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.